My name is Joseph McDonald, and this is episode 3 of my book club. It's been a little while since I've last spoken with you guys, very busy with many other projects, and this was an especially hard read that I've been reading for some time as well. So, without further ado, today we are discussing We, the Arcturians, A True Experience by Norma J. Milanovich. This book was channeled in the 80s and published in 1990 by Athena Publishing, which is really cool because Athena is the same name as the ship, which is positioned allegedly just a short ways from the Earth in an upper dimension, the 5th dimension or more. And yeah, it's been here for a long time apparently. And yeah, if you're a channeler, you could hypothetically channel conversations with the members mentioned in this book and that are actually there. How people want to interpret this as reality or subjective, fiction, non-fiction, whatever you want, go for it. For me, it's a lot closer to being fact than to simply call it my truth, but I can see why it wouldn't be very close to reality for people that are very much not talking about this stuff. I also want to suggest that as the Arcturians talk about God, it's the same God as Christianity's God. Talking about Jesus, talking about we're all one, the oneness, love and God being the same, like a radiant force that's all throughout. They even admit humbly to not fully comprehending the entire beauty and sophistication of God and His resonance through all things. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to go a little bit chapter by chapter. I'm not entirely sure, how to encapsulate the intro for you. I have had my Akashic Records done, Akashic Records being a library of all information in the third dimensional space-time being recorded in the Akashic Records. I've had mine open, and they say my soul is an Arcturian soul, which is freaking awesome, because when that happened, I went and looked up all the things I could about the Arcturians, and they resonated really well with me. Their philosophy was the same as mine, very holistic, very cut out the bureaucrats, cut out the waste. They're fifth dimensional. They're shorter than us physically, but consciously they're quite large. They dominate with consciousness, intention, love, and yeah, mental abilities basically. And I'd like to think that's where my own path has aligned me. So even if I don't have an alien soul, even if I don't have any connection with the divine beyond everyone else, very interesting how it's all playing out in great synchronicity. Anyway, without further ado, chapter 2, talking about their appearance. Like I said, they're shorter than us, so they'd be about 3.5, 4 feet tall. Very similar to little grays in their height, and they have no need to eat food. They would consume energy, but they literally only have to do that, I think it was once a week, and it's the tiniest little portion. They also don't really need sleep in the traditional sense either, so they've really moved beyond a lot of the limitations of the third dimension. They reproduce energetically, so basically they're chosen, they're put into roles to reproduce, and they come into alignment with their partner, and then they choose to do that, and apparently it's very governed within the oneness. It's one thing that did make me less comfortable with, as they described Arcturus, was how aligned it all is. So imagine if you had a government you loved completely and that had zero corruption. That's sort of what they describe, but they also take in other aspects of native culture to extremes, Vulcan culture if you're familiar with Star Trek, and they blend those together really nicely. I'll go back to that in a little bit. Going into chapter 3 suggests that humans were created at the moment of wonderment. Our souls were. So apparently there was a moment of wonderment. I'm not sure if that was their way of saying the Big Bang, but apparently all the souls, or a lot of the souls, were created at that point. However, we weren't made in the flesh until much later. Um, we were basically designed, it seems to be how it was, by what you could call demigods or dimensional aliens, in their perspective, and as written in the book, channeled by this person, the author. Anyway, we were made perfect, and so we were perfect millions of years ago. And then basically a warlike alien came down, messed all our shit up, enslaved us, manipulated us into breeding with them, breeding with animals, breeding all left, right, and center. And that's where we became a slave species. Within that time was an introduction of more alien souls. So hypothetically, my alien soul and other alien souls came in, and that's sort of where we are today, in this retribution, freedom from slavery, as caused by warlike service to self aliens who have spent a lot of time and vested interest into maintaining us in our lower frequencies and our lower level of control and self-management. I spoke about how there's a lot of interplay with the theology of Christianity. There seems to be a ton. Basically, my subjective interpretation is you take the term angels out of the Old Testament and you insert dimensional aliens, and now you're a lot closer to reality as I understand it. But you do you, however you feel, and whatever semantics you like. At the end of the day, I think we're all children of God, as interpreted by the Arcturians as well. We are all connected to the divine, and so it's really about how far you see that separation and divide. So that's pretty cool. Talks about the fourth dimension being an abstract of time and dreamlike. So there's the multiverse, they acknowledge the multiverse, but then it's like if I need to continue exploring all of these fourth dimensional abstract concepts and ideas in relation to each other, that's the fourth dimension. Fifth dimension being electromagnetism, or a quality of electromagnetism beyond regular facilitation by humans and average people around this place. Anyway, chapter 4, technical communication with spiritual self. So it's just trying to teach us a little bit in chapter 4 how to relate to self, how to relate to God, how to relate to the divine, and sort of how the Arcturians went from being as we are now into what they are now. And so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to watch the conscious evolution of a species and then have it written right there for you to read. It's a really complicated book for those that aren't on this path, but given that you're already with me on chapter 5 as my description of it, I'm sure you're more or less keeping up at your leisure. It talks about education, the difference between theirs and ours. Theirs is very much focused on conscious awareness and the growth of their conscious awareness as individuals and as a collective. And then it's also about raising your vibrational frequency. So hypothetically, the closer you get to the divine comprehension and God and being your God self, your best self, your Christ consciousness, the higher your frequency and the closer you are to transcending into upper dimensions. And so they spend all the time with their kids going, like, let's keep going, let's get better, let's get closer to God. It's a pretty cool idea. I'd be interested to see how it applies in practical terms by those frustrated by those challenges. But not really a thing of note right now. However, one thing that is of note is the Arcturians. They speak in a way that comes off as a little bit arrogant, but they very much noted the endless waste and redundancy of our bureaucratic systems, being very wasteful, whereas their society is very direct, cuts out all the rubbish. And it's very interesting to note, I'm not sure if it was in this book or another book I've read, that if you were upset in Arcturian society, you were being an Arcturian and you were upset, the community would notice and they would actually all flock to you to help solve your problem. I mean, discretionary, but more or less people would actually care enough to step forward and help you directly, even from leadership roles. So that was pretty cool to note that instead of, as human society does, just allows us all to be depressed and anxious, they actually go and solve that at source directly without walking around it or pretending it's normal. So that was pretty cool. Number 6 talks more about the Arcturians. I really want to help you suggest, like I said, native culture, Vulcan culture, and then sort of mix that with heaven, or your comprehension of heaven, and that's more or less what Arcturus and Arcturian society seems to be like in a lot of ways. There's control and rules, but it's cut down to the barest components, still allowing freedom of expression, freedom of life, and beauty, and all that good stuff. Number 7 is a huge section talking about every single room on their spaceship, Athena. Excuse my French. Anyway, Athena, being a ship positioned just outside of Earth's orbit in an upper dimension, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So basically, they help filter energies coming in and sending them down here, as occurs with the moon and as occurs with other races that are there as well. It's pretty awesome to think about the complexity by which they speak and the potential actual facilitation as described through the Bible and other ancient lores throughout the human history. It's pretty freaking fascinating to see it all coming together. The one aspect of Chapter 7 that I really found interesting enough to talk about right now is a part that actually I utilize of the Athena ship, which is they have light body healing chambers, which I've actually meditated and went to. And what you can do with that is you can take your etheric body, go up into the ship, go into this light chamber, and it just blasts your etheric body with the purest white light. And what that does is it basically removes unbounded energy that isn't serving you. And so it helps really bring us into our best balance of self, which is freaking awesome. So I'm always really excited when I find the time to do that, because it's really healing and it works rapidly. Especially when I'm in intense physical pain, I just meditate, go up there, come back, and I'm like, sweet, my body feels a lot better. And so that's always a sweet opportunity, and I can help individuals who are on this path try to do that for themselves by sharing that experience, because it is really, really incredible if you believe and you can really take yourself there. Chapter 8, Intuitive and Mental Ability Training. So within a lot of the groups of friends I have that are in the spiritual community, we sometimes practice our intuitive gifts, and that's really what Chapter 8 is about. It's about getting in alignment, using visualized training, breathing from the lower abdomen, and really getting into a closer relationship with the universe and your best self, which is awesome. Chapter 9, like I said, they speak a little bit arrogantly, but they claim ownership of Earth. Not humans, not our free will or anything like that, but literally Terra, Earth. They claim ownership of it. They've been using it as a schoolhouse for eons, apparently. And they have bases even now within the mountains. Like, so you can imagine in Canada out west, there would be Arcturians allegedly in that mountain right now doing their work, which is really cool. And they also acknowledge inner Earth as some level of true, which is pretty cool, and I also was under that interpretation based on all my research as well. It's not to say the Earth is necessarily hollow, it's just to say that there would be spaces within the Earth which have sustainable life of some form, dimensionally or otherwise. And I think that's awesome. And it resonates, so hopefully it resonates with you. And if you're offended, I'm sorry. It's not my intention. Anyway, one of their duties that they've been doing for a while is protection from destruction, of service to self-aliens, and even humanity. So really fascinating to note, and I've heard this from a few different sources and different species, that humanity doesn't actually have the right to blow themselves up right now. So if I were to have nuclear launch codes and I were to try to nuclearly launch ourselves, apparently we can't do that. Apparently they would step in and stop it, and I've heard other testimonies about the little greys stopping a launch the same way, same benevolent philosophies. I mean, that's not to say all little greys are on that side, but some little greys are definitely service to others, and I've heard them do the same thing as well, where they won't allow us to blow up the Earth. It's just too valuable as a schoolhouse for many, many different species with different soul orientations and different journeys. So it's just not something that anybody's comfortable with blowing up. I mean, obviously there's a level of destruction that's occurring, but that's part of the process of transmuting us from the third to the fifth dimensional. Anyway, their mission really is to usher in love and light and to bring us back into our knowing and experiencing our God self, which I think is freaking awesome, and I look forward to it. They talk about the government relations, and this really made me laugh, because they were like, yeah, we came down, we connected with a few governments on the third dimension, And so what that means is they can bring themselves down into resonance, into the third dimensional form. So they could manifest right in front of you in a third dimensional form, as well as upper dimensional forms, which you'd be less likely to see depending on where you are in your journey. But anyway, when they went and talked to governments really weren't interested in enlightenment or ascension or the second coming of Christ. They always just wanted weapons, and so the Arcturians inevitably said, goodbye, we can't help you. But can you imagine how freaking hilarious that is? You being an upper dimensional species coming down and being like, yeah, we have all these blessings from this advanced technology and lifestyle and culture that we have, and then being asked to give them guns, and it's like, no, we said we're from an advanced culture. It's like, we don't need those things because we already have dominance over our lesser selves. And yeah, so the Athena does have weaponized capabilities, but it's in a league that service to self aliens can't even compete with, so they stop trying. And that's why the Earth isn't regularly invaded by service to self aliens, because although they're already here doing some things, they're being rooted out and taken away from control positions, which is really good news. And I'm very thankful that humanity has all this support, because I don't see how we'd be doing it by ourselves based on all the mistakes that have been made. Anyway, our mission as individuals is to cleanse ourselves for the second coming of Christ. And they say that many will tremble as Jesus will come through in the third and the fourth dimension at the same time. They don't really make clear how that happens or what that would look like. But yeah, I'll be fascinated to participate in that as it occurs, if it occurs. Because yeah, I really don't see how that works. But they also suggested that Jesus comes through our own Christ consciousness as well, so not fully sure how this all works. They also suggested Jesus never left, so again, not sure how this works. It's sort of like maybe the idea of Jesus fragmenting between many different consciousness. I don't know, just speculating at that point. But anyway, should be interesting, and it's fascinating to me how much the content of this book combined with Christian theology. It doesn't denounce any other religion or belief system, and it doesn't even talk directly about Christianity, but it does love talking about Jesus, and it does bring in biblical themes as well. It suggests many other star beings are here, both from the soul into the flesh and in general. So Pleiadians, another very famous one on this mission. They'd hypothetically be out there with the Arcturians in their upper dimensional ship, protecting the Earth and transmuting messages to be downloaded into their starseed children as well. And I've met some of them as well, and they're freaking awesome too. And then the long and the short of this is it's all going to bring us into the fifth dimension. I said all, I didn't mean all. It's more about Earth and the souls that are here from ancient histories. So there's younger souls here, and they won't be doing the same transition. The main portal won't open again until the whole zodiac cycle of 26,000 years. But individuals will still reach enlightenment through that big blockade. But this is the soon and or coming and or now is the current big doorway for a great migration of souls. So that's freaking awesome. Another thing it says is there's not really death. Death is just a longer other version of life, basically. So yeah, there's no death, there's nothing to fear, and it also denounces evil, especially as you get into enlightenment. There's no such thing as evil once you're at a certain point. Those are human terms. I like to talk about it as the Zetas do: service to self, service to others. Those are really good terms for me to utilize, because at the end of the day, people are very much about themselves or they're about others, and it's not too much gray area in between for those that are deep on the path. Chapter 8 is the future, and it breaks down Psalm 23 in great depth, relating the grass to the heart chakra, and how we all have to sit within our heart chakra. And that's where we need to be as we go into basically Christ's big mansion in the sky. And we all have rooms and spaces and places to explore and grow, even when we get back to the other side. So that'll be freaking awesome. Anyway, yeah, if you want to check out this book, it's called We the Arcturians, A True Experience. I got it from my friend Judy Watts. She's an angel. And yeah, it's an incredible read, really dense. The Arcturians speak in a very specific way. Um, yeah, it's very direct, and it comes across as arrogant, but they have less variables and less gray area in their comprehension, so it makes sense. Anyway, it's been a great time speaking with you today. This is the third episode of my book club, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and hopefully my green screen worked. And God bless. Thank you for joining me. And I hope we can discuss this book at some point, The Arcturians, because it's always a joy for me, every single time, because they're freaking awesome. Thank you. Bye for now.